The first arrow took Jacob through the throat, and just like that, my world ended. One moment, the Arizona sun was a lazy beast, cooking the dust on the trail. The next, the air filled with screams, not just from our men, but from the very hills themselves. War cries ripped through the afternoon, calm, a sound so primal it turned my blood to ice. They came from nowhere. One second, there were rocks and cacti. The next, painted warriors were swarming the wagons, moving like ghosts made of muscle and fury. Arrows fell like a black rain. Gunshots cracked, sharp and useless against the tide. Our guards, hired for their tough talk and dusty hats, crumpled one by one. I dove behind a wagon wheel, the smell of gunpowder and hot blood filling my lungs. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the symphony of slaughter. I was supposed to be in Philadelphia, sipping tea in some stuffy drawing room, smiling politely at a man whose name I could barely remember. Harrison Blackwood. A man whose soul was made of cold steel and bank ledgers. My father had called it a brilliant match. I called it a gilded cage. That's why I was here. I'd run, fought my father tooth and nail to join his new mining venture out west, chasing a fantasy of freedom. Now that fantasy was dying in a chorus of screams and splintering wood. The fighting stopped as quickly as it began. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. It was heavy, filled with the buzzing of flies and my own ragged breathing. Then through the smoke and heat shimmer, he emerged. He wasn't just a man, he was a force of nature. Tall, impossibly broad, with skin the color of burnished copper. Long black hair, braided with eagle feathers, framed a face that was all sharp angles and brutal beauty. War paint, black and ochre, made him look like something from a nightmare. But it was his eyes that stopped my heart cold. They were dark, intelligent, and utterly devoid of mercy. He scanned the carnage he had wrought, his gaze sweeping over the dead and the dying without a flicker of emotion. Then his eyes found me, crouched behind the wheel. The world stopped spinning. It was just me and him, two poles of a universe that had suddenly, violently, snapped into a new alignment. He started walking towards me. Each step was deliberate, predatory, the grace of a panther, the purpose of a striking snake. I fumbled for the rifle Jacob had insisted I keep close, my hands shaking so hard I could barely grip the stock. I raised it, the heavy barrel trembling. He didn't slow down. He just kept coming, his eyes locked on mine. "Please," I whispered, the word a pathetic puff of air. "Please, don't." He stopped just feet from me, close enough that I could smell the leather and sage and something else, something wild and dangerous that was purely him. He looked down at the rifle, then back at my face. A flicker of something, amusement, contempt, crossed his features. When he spoke, his voice was a low rumble that vibrated through the ground, through the soles of my shoes and straight into my soul. His English was perfect, unnervingly so. "My name is Ayana." He said it not as an introduction, but as a pronouncement, a statement of fact, like the sky is blue or the sun is hot. Then he reached out, not for the gun, but for the locket around my neck. His fingers, surprisingly gentle, brushed my skin as he took the small silver oval in his hand. He didn't open it. He just held it, his thumb tracing the worn surface. His dark eyes lifted to meet mine again, and the look in them had changed. The cold indifference was gone. In its place was something I couldn't understand, something that looked terrifyingly like recognition. "Summer Whitmore," he said, my own name sounding like a curse on his tongue. I hadn't told him my name. How in God's name did he know who I was? Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through the shock. This wasn't a random raid. This wasn't bad luck on a dangerous trail. This was an execution, a targeted attack, and I was the target. He saw the realization dawn in my eyes. A slow, cruel smile touched his lips. "You will come with me," he commanded, his voice leaving no room for argument. Before I could even think to resist, he scooped me up as if I weighed nothing. His strength was breathtaking. One powerful arm wrapped around my waist, pinning me against a chest that felt like solid rock. He carried me to a magnificent black stallion that stood patiently amidst the chaos, its eyes as wild and intelligent as its master's. With a single fluid movement, he swung into the saddle, pulling me up to sit in front of him. His body was a wall of heat at my back, his arms a cage. The other warriors were mounting up, their movements swift and silent. They had taken supplies, guns, horses. They left the bodies where they fell, a grim testament to their efficiency. As we rode away from the burning wagons and the dead men who had tried to protect me, Iona leaned down, his breath warm against my ear. "Your father sends his regards." The words made no sense. My father? Charles Whitmore, the titan of industry, the man who controlled half of Philadelphia's wealth, was somehow connected to this savage? It was impossible. A trick. A lie meant to break me. But the certainty in Iona's voice was absolute. We rode for hours, deeper and deeper into a landscape of red rock and brutal sun. The world I knew, the world of paved streets and gas lamps and polite society, was falling away with every hoofbeat. I was adrift in a sea of stone and sky, a captive of a man who knew my name and spoke of my father like an old acquaintance. I tried to piece it together. The mining venture. The land. My father wasn't a sentimental man. He never did anything without a reason, and that reason was always profit. He wanted something out here, something valuable enough to send his only daughter into Apache territory, and valuable enough for these warriors to stop him. The sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the canyons in shades of blood and fire. We approached a sheer cliff face, a dead end. But as we drew closer, a narrow slit in the rock appeared, an entrance so perfectly concealed it was invisible until you were right upon it. We rode through the passage and the world changed. The narrow canyon opened into a hidden valley, a slash of impossible green in the middle of the desert. A clear stream snaked through the valley floor, feeding tidy rows of corn, beans, and squash. Dozens of wickiups, dome-shaped dwellings, were scattered among the cottonwood trees. It was a secret, thriving world, completely shielded from outsiders. As we entered the village, a hush fell. People emerged from their homes, their faces stoic, their dark eyes following our procession. They stared at me, the white woman with hair the color of spun gold, held captive by their war leader. I shrank against Ayana, the weight of their gaze a physical thing. "Do not be afraid," he murmured, his voice a low vibration against my back. "They will not harm you. You are more valuable to us alive." Valuable. Not a person, a thing. A piece on a chessboard, I didn't understand. We stopped before the largest wickiup. An old woman emerged, her face a beautiful roadmap of wrinkles, her silver hair braided with turquoise. She looked at Ayana, then at me, and began speaking in the melodic Apache tongue, her tone sharp and questioning. Ayana replied calmly, but there was a tension in his words. Another woman appeared, younger, with eyes like chips of obsidian, in a fierce, proud beauty. She glared at me, a raw, undisguised hatred in her look that was more frightening than the violence of the raid. When she spoke to Ayana, her voice was laced with venom. I didn't need a translator to understand jealousy. "This is Kiona, my grandmother," Ayana said to me, ignoring the younger woman. "And this," he added, his voice flat, "is Tyanita." Tyanita spat a single word in my direction, then fixed her furious gaze on the locket that still hung around my neck. Her eyes went wide. The hatred vanished, replaced by something far stranger. It was a look of pure, unadulterated fear. Her hand flew to her mouth, and she stumbled back a step, whispering a string of Apache words that sounded like a panicked prayer. What did she see? It was just a simple locket, a gift from my mother long ago. What could possibly terrify this fierce warrior woman so completely? Kiona, the old woman, stepped forward. She looked from Tyanita's terrified face to the locket. Her own eyes, wise and ancient, narrowed. She reached out a weathered hand, not to me, but to the silver oval. Her fingers trembled as she touched it. She whispered a single word. A name, perhaps. It held a world of reverence and sorrow. Ayana went rigid behind me. His arm tightened around my waist, his knuckles pressing into my ribs. I could feel the sudden, violent tension in his body. The entire village was staring now, not at me, but at the small piece of silver hanging around my neck. The air crackled with a silent, heavy dread. I was no longer just a captive. I was something else. a symbol, an omen. And whatever my locket meant to these people, it was a matter of life and death. Tyanita finally tore her eyes from the locket and looked at Ayana. She spoke, her voice low and urgent, pleading. He cut her off with a sharp command. The authority in his voice was absolute. He was the chief here, and his word was law. He dismounted, pulling me down with him. His grip on my arm was like iron. You will stay here, he said, gesturing to a small, isolated wickiup on the edge of the village. He barked an order at Tyanita. Her eyes flashed with anger, but she nodded, her gaze skittering away from my locket as if it might burn her. She led me to the dwelling, a silent, hostile guard. Inside it was clean and sparse, with soft buffalo robes on the ground. She gestured for me to sit, then stood by the entrance. Her arms crossed, her face a mask of stone. I was a prisoner, and she was my jailer. I sat on the robes, my mind reeling. My father, Ayana's perfect English, his knowledge of my name, Tyanita's terror, Kiona's reverence. It all revolved around the locket my mother had given me before she died. My mother, a fragile, beautiful woman who faded from my life like a watercolor painting left in the rain. I barely remembered her. I had her hair, her eyes, and this locket. That was all. Inside was a tiny painted portrait of her, a smiling woman with a secret sadness in her eyes. On impulse, my fingers trembling, I opened the locket. I stared at the familiar portrait, my mother looking back at me from across the years. But my eyes were drawn to the background of the painting, something I had never truly looked at before. Behind her shoulder, faint and small, was a symbol, a simple carving, a spiral with 3 lines radiating from the center. It meant nothing to me, just an artist's flourish. But I was a captive in a hidden village where this very locket struck fear and reverence into the hearts of my captors. Nothing was a coincidence here. Night fell, and with it came a chilling breeze that whispered through the canyon. Tyanita brought me a bowl of stew and some water, placing it on the ground without a word before resuming her post at the door. I ate, the food tasteless in my mouth. My every thought was a frantic scramble for answers. Later, the flap of the wickiup was pushed aside. It wasn't Tyanita. It was Ayana. He entered and stood over me, a massive silhouette against the firelight from the village. His face was unreadable, the war paint gone, revealing the stark, handsome planes of his features. Why? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Why me? He didn't answer immediately. He just watched me, his dark eyes intense, searching. Your father is digging where he should not, he said finally. He seeks a poison in our sacred land. We gave him warnings. He did not listen. Poison? He's mining for silver, I said, repeating the lie my father had told me. A humorless smile touched Ayana's lips. Your father does not care for silver. He cares for power, and the root that grows only in this canyon. It offers a power of a different kind. A root? A medicinal herb? My mind flashed to the stories I'd dismissed as high society gossip, of my father's obsession with exotic botany, his funding of strange expeditions to remote corners of the world. So you took me, I said, the pieces clicking into place, for leverage, to make him stop. We hoped it would be that simple, he said. His gaze dropped to the locket, which I still held in my hand. But you have made it complicated. He crouched down in front of me, his presence filling the small space. Where did you get this? He asked, his voice low and dangerous. It was my mother, I told him. She gave it to me before she died. Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, a deep, ancient sorrow. Your mother, he said, the words heavy. What was her name? Lillian, I said. Lillian Whitmore. Ayana closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them, the warrior was gone. In his place was a man haunted by a ghost. Lillian, he repeated softly, the name a strange melody in his Apache accent. She told your father it was a place of healing. He saw only a thing to be sold. My breath caught in my throat. You knew her. My mother. It was impossible. She had never left Philadelphia. She had died in her bed of a fever when I was 5 years old. My father had told me so himself. Before she was Lillian Whitmore, Ayana said, his voice rough with emotion. She was known by another name. She lived here, with us. She was one of us. The world tilted on its axis. My mother, here, in this hidden canyon. A lie. My entire life was a lie. That symbol, I whispered, holding up the open locket. What is it? It is the mark of the guardian, he said. A sacred duty passed down through a single bloodline. A duty to protect the root, to protect this valley. He looked me straight in the eye, his gaze pinning me in place. It is Tyanita's mark. It was her mother's before her, and the woman who came before them was Lillian, your mother. My blood ran cold. Tyanita wasn't just a jealous rival. The hatred in her eyes wasn't for me, the white woman who had captured her leader's attention. It was for the descendant of a woman who had abandoned her sacred post. She was looking at me and seeing a traitor's blood. And the impossible truth crashed down on me. Tyanita and I, we were related. My mother was her family, which meant Tyanita was my cousin. The ground beneath me seemed to fall away. My mother, a high society belle from Philadelphia, was an Apache guardian from a hidden canyon in Arizona. The story of her life, the story of my life, was a carefully constructed fiction. My father, I breathed, the words tasting like ash. He didn't marry a socialite. He took her from her home. She chose to go with him, Ayana corrected, though his voice held no comfort. She believed she could protect this place from him, from the outside. She was wrong. He used her knowledge, and when she refused to give him the final location of the route, he took you. He knew she would follow. The fever, the story of her death. It wasn't a fever. He killed her, didn't he? I asked, the question hanging in the air, cold and heavy as a shroud. Ayana didn't have to answer. The truth was in his eyes a terrible, burning certainty. My father, the man who had raised me, was a monster. A murderer who had stolen my mother, stolen me, and was now trying to steal the last of her legacy. Tyanita believes you have come to finish what your father started, Ayana continued, his voice grim. She sees you as a curse, a snake born of a snake. And you, I choked out, what do you see? He was silent for a long time, his gaze sweeping over my face, my golden hair, my blue eyes, all the features that marked me as an outsider, as my father's daughter. I see a weapon, he said finally, his voice devoid of emotion. Your father created you. He raised you in his world. You speak his language. You understand his greed. We are going to use you to destroy him. He stood up, the warmth and vulnerability he'd shown vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. The impassive warrior was back, his face a mask of cold resolve. Tomorrow your training begins, he said. Tyanita will teach you our ways. You will learn to ride, to track, to fight. You will learn the history of your mother's people. You will forget you were ever Summer Whitmore. He turned to leave. Why Tyanita? I asked, my voice shaking. She hates me. She thinks I'm a curse. Ayana paused at the entrance, his back to me. She hates you because she sees her family's failure in your face. She will train you because my grandmother has commanded it. Kiona believes the prophecy has come to pass. Prophecy? A daughter of the sun, marked with the guardian sign, would return from the white man's world. She would either be our salvation or our final destruction. He looked back over his shoulder, his dark eyes boring into me. Let's hope for all our sakes you are the former. And then he was gone, leaving me alone in the dark with the shattered ruins of my life. My mother was a guardian. My father was a murderer. My cousin wanted me dead. And my captor, the man who held the keys to my past, saw me as nothing more than a tool. I was trapped in a nightmare of my own blood. And as the first rays of dawn crept into the canyon, I knew one thing with chilling certainty. I was not here to be rescued. I was here to be forged into a weapon. And my target was the man I had once called father. The next few weeks were a blur of pain and exhaustion. Tyanita was a brutal teacher. There was no sympathy in her, no patience. Every stumble, every mistake was met with a sharp word or a shove. She drove me from sunup to sundown, pushing my body and my will to their breaking points. I learned to grind corn until my hands were raw, to weave baskets until my fingers bled. She taught me the language of the desert, which plants healed, which killed, how to find water where there was none. She forced me onto the back of a wild Mustang and made me ride until I could stay in the saddle through sheer force of will. She taught me to fight, how to use a knife, not like a lady defending her honor, but like a warrior ending a life, how to move silently, to kill without a sound. Through it all, she barely spoke to me in English. It was always Apache, her words sharp and fast, forcing me to learn or be left behind. And in her eyes, I always saw the same thing: contempt. I was my mother's daughter, the child of a woman who had betrayed her people for a white man. I was a stain. Ayana watched from a distance. I would feel his eyes on me as I practiced with a bow, his silent presence a constant pressure. He never offered praise, never offered help. He was an observer, a general evaluating his new weapon. He was waiting to see if I would break. I refused to give him the satisfaction. I poured all my grief, all my rage into the training. Every sore muscle, every cut and bruise, became a testament to my resolve. The soft, pampered girl from Philadelphia was being burned away, leaving something harder, leaner in her place. One evening after a particularly grueling day of training, I found Kiona waiting for me by my wickiup. The old woman beckoned me to sit. "She trains you hard," Kiona said, her English slow but clear. She had been observing my lessons with Tianita, her ancient eyes missing nothing. "She hates me," I replied, rubbing my aching shoulder. "She does not hate you," Kiona corrected gently. "She hates the ghost you carry, the ghost of Lillian." The old woman's eyes grew distant, lost in memory. "Lillian was like you, hair of the sun, eyes of the sky. She was brave, but her heart was divided. She loved your father. She did not see the rot in his soul until it was too late." Kiona reached out and took my hand. Her skin was like dry parchment, but her grip was surprisingly strong. "Tianita fears that your heart is also divided. She fears you are still your father's daughter." "My father is a monster," I said, the words raw. "He killed my mother. He wants to destroy this place. He is my enemy." A slow smile spread across Kiona's wrinkled face. "Good. The warrior is waking up. But a warrior needs more than hate. A warrior needs to know what she is fighting for." Over the next few nights, Kiona told me the stories. She told me of my mother's childhood in this valley, of her skill with the healing roots, of her fierce spirit. She told me of the prophecy passed down through generations of guardians. It spoke of a time when the canyon would face its greatest threat, and that its fate would rest in the hands of a daughter who carried two worlds in her blood. "You are that daughter, Summer," Kiona said, her voice filled with a powerful conviction. "You are not a curse. You are our only hope." Her words were a balm on my wounded soul. For the first time since my capture, I felt a flicker of something other than fear and anger. I felt a sense of belonging, a purpose. The change in me was not lost on Tianita. One afternoon, as we were tracking rabbits in the hills above the village, she stopped and turned to me. Her black eyes narrowed. "You move differently," she said, her English clipped. "You no longer walk like a white woman." "You're a good teacher," I replied, my voice even. She snorted, a dismissive sound. "Kiona fills your head with stories, prophecies. Do not let it make you soft. Your blood is still tainted." "My blood is the same as yours," I shot back, my patience finally snapping. "Lillian was your aunt. That makes her my mother. We are family." Rage flared in her eyes. "Do not speak her name. She abandoned us. She abandoned her duty for your father. She spat on the graves of her ancestors." "She made a mistake," I yelled, stepping toward her. "She fell in love with a man who deceived her. Does that erase everything she was? Everything she did for this tribe before she met him?" We stood facing each other, two women bound by a legacy of pain and betrayal. The air between us crackled with unspoken grief. "He will come for you," Tianita said, her voice dropping to a low, intense whisper. "And when he does, you will have to choose. The blood of the traitor or the blood of the guardian. You cannot be both." Before I could reply, a high-pitched whistle echoed from the valley below. A signal: scouts. We raced back to the village, our personal conflict forgotten in the face of a new threat. Two Apache scouts were riding hard into the center of the camp, their horses lathered in sweat. They slid from their saddles and began speaking rapidly to Ayana, who had emerged from his wiki-up. His face turned to stone. I ran to his side. "What is it? What's happening?" He turned to me, and the look in his eyes sent a chill down my spine. The cold, calculating general was back. "Cavalry," he said, his voice flat. "A full patrol, less than a day's ride from here. They're not just searching randomly." He paused, letting the weight of his next words sink in. "They have Apache trackers, men from the reservation, men who know these lands, and they are being led by a man your father hired personally." My heart stopped. "Who?" "A man named Blackwood," Ayanna said. "Harrison Blackwood, the man I was supposed to marry. My father hadn't just sent the army. He had sent my fiancée. He was using the man who was to be my husband to hunt me down like an animal." The cruelty of it was staggering, but that wasn't the worst part. "They're not just coming for you, Summer," Ayanna continued, his voice grim. "The scouts overheard their plans. They have maps, detailed geological surveys. Your father gave them everything." He looked me dead in the eye. "They know exactly where the route is. They aren't coming to rescue you. They're coming to take the canyon. And their orders are to eliminate anyone who stands in their way." The Council of Elders convened immediately. The mood was grim. They were warriors, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. A direct fight against a cavalry patrol was suicide. One of the elders, a stern-faced man named Garrick, pointed a finger at me. "She brought this upon us," he snarled in Apache. "The prophecy was a lie. She is the destruction Kiona spoke of. We should give her to them. Perhaps they will spare us." Tyanita stepped forward, her hand on her knife. "We do not trade our blood for mercy from snakes," she said, her voice ringing with authority. She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something other than hatred in her eyes. It was a grudging respect, a warrior's solidarity. "She is one of us now. We fight." The debate raged, tearing the council apart. Flee? Fight? Surrender me? Ayanna remained silent, listening, his face an unreadable mask. Finally, Kiona rose to her feet. The council fell silent. "The prophecy did not say the path would be easy," the old woman said, her voice frail but steady. "It said our fate rests with her. We must trust the spirits." She turned her ancient eyes on Ayanna. "What does our war leader say?" All eyes turned to him. The fate of the village rested on his shoulders. He looked at me, his gaze so intense it felt like he was peering into my soul. He was weighing my worth, my strength, the weapon he had tried to forge. "There is a fourth option," Ayanna said slowly, his voice commanding the attention of everyone in the circle. "We do not run. We do not fight their way. We do not sacrifice our own." He walked to the center of the circle, drawing a line in the dirt with a stick. "They are coming into our home. They believe they have the advantage. Numbers. Guns. But we have something they do not." His eyes found mine again. "We have the Guardian." A murmur went through the elders. Garrick scoffed. "A white girl who has been with us for a few weeks? She is no Guardian." "Her blood is the blood of Lillian," Ayanna countered, his voice like steel. "This canyon is in her veins. She knows its secrets because they were born in her." He was bluffing, but his conviction was so absolute that it silenced the dissent. He turned his back on the council and spoke directly to me, his voice low so only I could hear. "Your father thinks he has you trapped. He has sent your past to destroy your future. He believes you are still the fragile girl who fled Philadelphia." His eyes burned with a fierce, wild light. "He is wrong. We are going to turn his own weapon against him. You are going to meet them, but not as a captive to be rescued." He placed his hands on my shoulders, his grip firm, grounding. "You will go to them as the rightful heir to this canyon, as its protector. You will use your name, your history, your father's own arrogance against him. You will be the poison in his heart." A thrill of fear and exhilaration shot through me. It was an insane gamble. Walking into an enemy camp, armed with nothing but my name, and a story they would never believe. "They'll kill me," I whispered. "No," Ayanna said with unnerving certainty. "Blackwood is here to retrieve his property, his bride. Your father's orders will be to bring you back alive. He wants to break you himself." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. But they don't know that we know their true mission. They think we are ignorant savages. We will use that. While you distract them, my warriors will prepare the canyon. We will not fight them on an open field. We will make the very stones our weapons. It was a brilliant, terrifying plan. A two-pronged attack, one of words and deception, the other of shadow and stone. What do I have to do? I asked, my voice steady now, filled with a cold resolve I didn't know I possessed. A slow, dangerous smile spread across Ayana's face. It was the first time I had ever seen him truly smile, and it was the most terrifying and beautiful thing I had ever witnessed. You are going to give Mr. Blackwood a wedding gift, he said, the war of his nightmares. Dressed in the finest buckskin dress Kiona owned, with my hair braided in the Apache style and Tyanita's guardian mark painted on my temples with ochre, I rode out to meet them. I was alone. That was Ayana's masterstroke. Not a delegation of warriors, not a chief suing for peace, just a single woman on a horse, waiting for them at the mouth of the canyon pass. An impossible, unbelievable sight. I saw them before they saw me. A long column of blue-coated soldiers, flanking a man in civilian clothes on a fine chestnut gelding. Harrison Blackwood. Even from a distance I recognized his stiff, arrogant posture. He saw me. His hand went up and the entire column halted. Binoculars were raised. Shouted orders echoed in the clear desert air. They approached cautiously, rifles at the ready. Harrison rode ahead of the soldiers, his face a mixture of shock and fury. "Summer?" he called out, his voice tight with disbelief. "My God, what have they done to you?" He looked me over, the buckskin, the braids, the paint on my face, with open disgust. "We're getting you out of here. It's all right. Your ordeal is over." I held up a hand, a gesture of command that felt surprisingly natural. "There has been no ordeal, Harrison, and I'm not going anywhere." I let the words hang in the air. The soldiers exchanged confused glances. Harrison's face darkened. "Don't be ridiculous," he snapped. "You've been brainwashed. These savages, these people," I interrupted, my voice as cold and sharp as a shard of ice, "are my family. They have treated me with more honor and respect than I ever received in my father's house." I nudged my horse forward, closing the distance between us until I could see the vein throbbing in his temple. "I am here by choice," I said, my voice ringing with unshakable conviction. "I have found my home." Harrison laughed, a short, ugly sound. "Your home? A collection of mud huts in the middle of nowhere? Don't be a fool, Summer. Your father is worried sick. He sent me to bring you back." "My father doesn't care about me," I said, my voice dropping. "He cares about what's in this canyon. A rare botanical specimen, I believe. One he plans to exploit, no matter the cost." The color drained from Harrison's face. He was a businessman, not a soldier. He was out of his depth, and he knew it. "I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered. "Oh, I think you do," I said, leaning forward in my saddle. "Tell me, Harrison, did my father mention that this land is, in fact, mine? That it was passed down to me through my mother's bloodline? That you and your soldiers are trespassing on my property?" I was weaving a story from threads of truth and lies, spinning a legal web he couldn't comprehend. His world was one of contracts and deeds, and I was speaking his language. "That's preposterous," he sputtered. "Your mother was Lillian Ashworth of the Philadelphia Ashworths." "Was she?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "That's a very interesting story, but the people here tell a different one. A story of a woman named Lillian who was the guardian of this valley, a woman who bore a child with sun-colored hair." I smiled, a cold, predatory smile I'd learned from Ayana. "You see my problem, Harrison. It seems I have two histories, and I'm choosing to believe the one that gives me the power to have you and your men arrested for armed trespass." The captain of the cavalry patrol, a weathered man with tired eyes, urged his horse forward. "Ma'am," he said, addressing me respectfully, "our orders are from General Crook himself, based on a request from Mr. Charles Whitmore. We are to secure his daughter and his legal mining claim." "There is no mining claim," I said firmly. "Only a fraudulent document created by a thief and a murderer." The captain's eyes widened. "That's a serious accusation, ma'am." "And I have serious proof," I lied, praying my bluff would hold. "My mother's journals. Correspondence between her and my father. Detailed accounts of his threats, his coercion, and his ultimate plan to steal this land and its resources. It's all safely hidden away, ready to be sent to every major newspaper on the East Coast the moment any harm comes to me or my people. It was a masterpiece of a lie, constructed from the grief and rage inside me. I was inventing the evidence I wished I had, the justice my mother never received. Harrison and the captain were stunned into silence. They had come expecting to rescue a traumatized debutante. They found a ruthless political operator who claimed ownership of the very land they were sent to conquer. Now you have two choices, I continued, pressing my advantage. You can turn your column around and tell my father his plan has failed, or you can attempt to invade my land and arrest me. But I assure you, Captain, the scandal will ruin your career. And as for you, Harrison, I fixed him with a look of pure contempt. The engagement is off. I turned my horse, my back to them, a gesture of supreme confidence I did not feel. My heart was pounding like a war drum. This is my only warning, I called over my shoulder. Leave now, and do not come back. I rode back into the canyon, never once looking back to see if they were following. I prayed to the spirits Kiona spoke of that my bluff had been enough. When I reached the village, Ayana was waiting. His face was unreadable. They are conferring, he said. The scouts are watching. You have confused them, sown doubt. It was effective. Coming from him, it was the highest praise imaginable. But our victory was short-lived. An hour later, a scout returned with grim news. The soldiers were not leaving. They were making camp at the mouth of the pass. They were settling in for a siege. My bluff had bought us time, but it hadn't won the war. Harrison, pushed by my father's greed, was not going to give up so easily. That night, as the enemy campfires twinkled in the darkness beyond our sanctuary, Ayana came to my wickiup. The entire village was on edge, the air thick with the silent fear of the coming battle. He sat with me by the small fire, the silence stretching between us. You were brave today, he said finally, his voice a low rumble. You have the heart of a warrior. Lillian would be proud. Tears pricked my eyes. It was the first time he had spoken her name with anything other than pain. It wasn't enough, I whispered. They're still here. I did not expect them to flee so easily, he admitted. Your father's greed is a powerful force, but you have given us what we needed most. Time. He looked into the fire, his profile etched in the flickering light. When I captured you, he said, his voice thoughtful, I saw only a tool, a pawn in a war against your father. I planned to use you, to trade you, whatever it took to protect my people. He turned to look at me, his dark eyes searching mine. I did not expect you to have your mother's fire. I did not expect you to have her strength. I did not expect... He paused, seeming to weigh his words. To see you as anything more than a ghost of the past. My heart quickened. The space between us suddenly felt charged, electric. The warrior, the general, the captor, they were all fading away, leaving just the man. A man who was carrying the weight of his people's survival on his shoulders. A man who was looking at me as if he were seeing me for the first time. Ayana, I began, not knowing what I was going to say. He reached out, his hand gently touching the guardian symbol Tyanita had painted on my temple. His fingers were warm against my skin. The prophecy said the daughter of two worlds would be our salvation or our destruction, he murmured, his thumb tracing the ochre lines. But it never said which path she would have to walk to save us. A horn blast, shrill and clear, echoed from the pass. An army signal. Ayana was on his feet in an instant, the warrior mask slamming back into place. They are moving, he said, his voice hard as flint. Another scout came running into the village, his words tumbling out in a panicked rush of Apache. Ayana listened, his face growing darker with every word. What is it? I demanded. It is not a full assault, he said, his eyes scanning the canyon walls. It's a small party, 10 men, maybe 12, and Blackwood is with them. They are coming up the pass with a white flag. A trick. It had to be a trick. But that is not all, Ayana added, his gaze finally settling on me. A new, terrible understanding in his eyes. They are not just carrying a flag. They have brought a gift. He took a deep breath. They have your father. Charles Whitmore, in the flesh. Here, my father had not sent his legions. He had come himself. The master manipulator was taking the stage for the final act. This changed everything. My carefully constructed lies about journals and evidence would crumble to dust the moment I faced him. He knew the truth. He was the truth. It's a trap, Tayanita hissed, appearing at my side with a bow in her hand. They want to lure you out. No, Ayana said, his strategic mind working furiously. This is not a military move. This is personal. He knows she is his only weakness, and he believes he is hers. He looked at me. He has come to break his weapon. A cold, terrifying calm settled over me. Kiona's words echoed in my mind. A warrior needs to know what she is fighting for. I was fighting for my mother's memory, for my cousin's future, for this hidden valley and the people who had taken me in. I was fighting for the truth. Let him come, I said, my voice steady. Let's finish this. We met them in the middle of the pass. A delegation of Apache warriors led by Ayana and me faced a small group of soldiers led by Captain Hayes, Harrison Blackwood, and my father. Seeing him was like being struck by lightning. Charles Whitmore was smaller than I remembered, but his presence was immense. He radiated an aura of power and absolute confidence. His cold gray eyes, so like my own, swept over me, taking in the buckskin and the braids with a flicker of distaste. Summer, he said, his voice the same calm, controlled tone he used in boardrooms and at dinner parties. This foolishness has gone on long enough. It's time to come home. I am home, I replied, my voice ringing off the canyon walls. My father smiled, a thin, bloodless expression. You have your mother's dramatic flair and her sentimentality. It was her undoing. Don't let it be yours. He stepped forward, the soldiers parting for him. Let's dispense with the pleasantries. I want the root, all of it. I have the resources to synthesize it, to mass produce it. It will revolutionize medicine, and it will make us wealthier than kings. It is not for sale, Ayana said, his voice a low growl. My father ignored him, his eyes fixed on me. This is not a negotiation. I have a dozen cavalrymen here. 200 more are waiting 2 days' march from here. I have government contracts, land grants, all legally obtained. This valley belongs to me. You are living on my property. This valley belongs to the people, I said. It has for centuries. Your pieces of paper mean nothing here. Then we will have to make them mean something, my father said smoothly. But I am a reasonable man. I am your father. I don't want to see you hurt. He gestured to Harrison. Marry Harrison, as planned. Help me broker a deal with these people. A small reservation, somewhere else of course. In return for their cooperation and the route, I will be generous. Everyone gets what they want. It was the perfect villain's monologue. Reasonable, logical, utterly monstrous. He was offering to buy my soul and enslave my family. And if I refuse, I asked, his smile vanished. Then Captain Hayes has his orders. He will clear this valley of all hostiles. He will secure my assets. And you, my dear daughter, will be placed in a sanatorium. Clearly, your ordeal has affected your mind. It will be a tragedy, but business is business. The threat was clear. He would not just kill my new family. He would erase me, lock me away, and paint me as a madwoman. He would win. He always won. I looked at Ayana, at Tayanita, at the proud, defiant faces of the warriors behind me, and I knew what I had to do. The prophecy was not about a single choice, a single battle. It was about becoming who I was meant to be, the daughter of two worlds. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, alone. You're right, Father, I said, my voice calm. Business is business, so let's talk terms. My father's eyes lit up with triumph. Harrison smirked. Ayana's face was a mask of thunder. You want the root, I continued, and I want this valley and its people to be safe. Forever. A treaty, my father said, nodding. Excellent. I knew you'd see reason. Not a treaty, I said, and smiled my mother's smile. A corporation. He stared at me, confused. What? We're going to form a company, I explained, walking slowly toward him, my mind racing, pulling together every lesson in business and law he had ever drilled into me. The Chiricahua Apothecary Company. The tribe will be the majority shareholders. They will retain full ownership of this land and all its resources. My mother's bloodline, Tyanita, and I will be the board of directors. I stopped right in front of him. You, Father, will be granted a single exclusive contract. You will provide the capital, the labs, the distribution network. In exchange, you will get 10% of the net profits. Not a penny more. He was speechless. His jaw worked, but no sound came out. It's a generous offer, I said lightly. You'll still be a very rich man, but you will not own it. You will not control it. And if you ever violate the terms of the contract, if a single soldier sets foot in this valley without invitation, the contract is void and you get nothing. This is insane, Harrison blurted out. It's business, I snapped back, not taking my eyes off my father. He taught me everything I know. My father finally found his voice. You would use my own methods against me? Your own father? You used my mother against her own people, I replied, my voice dropping to a whisper. You murdered her when she wouldn't give you what you wanted. Don't you dare speak to me of family. The truth spoken aloud hung in the air between us like a drawn blade. He stared at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw something in his eyes I had never seen before. Fear. He wasn't afraid of the Apache warriors. He was afraid of me. He had created a monster, an exact reflection of his own ruthless ambition, and he had lost control of it. You have no proof of that, he hissed. Don't I said, letting the bluff hang in the air one last time. Sign the contract, Father, or we'll let a jury decide. He knew he was beaten. To fight would be to risk exposing everything. The scandal would destroy him. His greed was powerful, but his pride, his reputation, was paramount. He looked at me, his daughter, his enemy. His face was a mask of pure hatred. Draw up the papers, he said, the words tasting like poison in his mouth. It took weeks. Lawyers were sent for. Contracts were drafted. My father and his men remained camped outside the valley, prisoners of a negotiation they could not win. During that time, something incredible happened. The two camps, separated by centuries of hatred, began to talk. The soldiers, bored and tired, started trading with the Apache. The children, curious and fearless, began to watch each other play. The tension slowly, painstakingly, began to dissolve. I worked side by side with Tyanita and Kiona, translating the complex legal language, ensuring every clause protected our people. The animosity between my cousin and me melted away, replaced by a shared purpose. We were the guardians, together. The day the contract was signed was a clear, bright morning. My father, his face like thunder, signed his name to a document that turned him from a conqueror into an employee. As he prepared to leave, he stopped in front of me. You could have had everything, he said, his voice low and bitter. I do have everything, I replied, looking back at the village, at Ayana watching from the rocks above, at the canyon that was my birthright. He left without another word. Harrison Blackwood scurried after him, a man who had lost a bride and a fortune in the same stroke. That evening, the village celebrated. A great bonfire was lit, and the sound of drumming and singing filled the canyon for the first time in weeks. Ayana found me standing on a ledge overlooking the celebration, the same ledge where we had our first real conversation. The warrior and the businesswoman, he said, coming to stand beside me. You truly are the daughter of two worlds. We did it, I said, a wave of relief so powerful it almost brought me to my knees, washing over me. It's over. No, he said, turning to face me. It is just beginning. He reached out and took my hand. His touch was no longer that of a captor, but of a partner, an equal. You saved us, Summer, not with a knife or a bow, but with your mind, with your heart. You fulfilled the prophecy. He looked into my eyes and I saw everything there. Respect, admiration, and something deeper. Something that made my heart ache with a joy I had never known. The council has asked me to speak with you, he said, his voice growing serious. They believe the guardian of the valley should not stand alone. They believe she needs a partner, a protector. He took a deep breath. They believe you need a husband. I looked at him, this magnificent, complicated man who had captured me, trained me, and ultimately trusted me with the fate of his world. The man who had shown me who I was truly meant to be. And who did they have in mind? I asked, a smile playing on my lips. His answering smile was slow and filled with a light that chased away all the shadows of our past. A rather demanding war chief, he said, one who has waited a lifetime for a woman strong enough to stand beside him. He didn't have to ask the question. My answer was in my eyes, in the way I leaned into him, in the way our hands clasped together. Two worlds, two hearts, finally becoming one. I came to the West seeking freedom and found a war. I was captured by an enemy and found my family. I lost a father and found a home. My old life was a gilded cage, but this was freedom. Real, wild, and beautiful. And I had fought for every last second of it. So what do you think? Did Summer make the right call, turning her father's own tactics against him? Or should she have sought a more violent form of justice? It's a tough question, and I'm honestly not sure what I would have done in her place. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story of love, betrayal, and a woman who refused to be a victim, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. We've got so many more stories to tell, and you won't want to miss a single one. Thanks for watching.